The Holy Joseph in the Forest. Once upon a time, there was a mother who had 3 daughters. The eldest was rude and wicked, the second much better, though imperfect, but the youngest was a pious, good child. The mother, however, was so peculiar that she favored the eldest daughter the most and could not stand the youngest. Thus, she often sent the poor girl into a large forest to get rid of her, thinking she would become lost and never return. However, the guardian angel that every good child has did not abandon her and always brought her back on the right path. One time, though, it seemed as if the guardian angel was absent and the child couldn't find her way out of the forest. She walked until evening fell and then saw a tiny light burning in the distance. She ran towards it and arrived at a small hut. She knocked, the door opened, and she came to a second door where she knocked again. An old man with a snow-white beard, looking venerable, opened it for her, and it was none other than St. Joseph. He said kindly, "Come, dear child, sit by the fire on my little chair and warm yourself. I will fetch you clear water if you are thirsty. But here in the forest, I have nothing for you to eat but a couple of little roots which you must first scrape and cook." St. Joseph gave her the roots. The girl cleaned them, then took a piece of pancake and the bread her mother had given her, mixed everything together in a pan over the fire, and cooked herself a thick soup. When it was ready, St. Joseph said, "I am so hungry. Give me some of your food." The child willingly gave him more than she kept for herself, and God's blessing was with her so that she was satisfied. After they had eaten, St. Joseph said, "Now let's go to bed. I have only one bed. You lie down in it, and I will lie on the straw on the ground." "No," she answered, "you stay in your own bed. The straw is soft enough for me." However, St. Joseph took the child in his arms and carried her to the little bed, where she said her prayers and fell asleep. The next morning, when she woke up, she wanted to say good morning to St. Joseph, but didn't see him. She got up and looked for him, but couldn't find him anywhere. Finally, she noticed a bag of money behind the door, so heavy that she could barely carry it. Written on it was that it was for the child who had slept there that night. She took the bag, bound it away with it, and safely returned to her mother. Because she gave her mother all the money, she couldn't help but be satisfied with her. The next day, the second child also felt a desire to go into the forest. The mother gave her a much larger piece of pancake and bread. It happened to her just as it had with the first child. In the evening, she arrived at the little hut of St. Joseph, who gave her roots for a thick soup. When it was ready, he also said to her, "I am so hungry, give me some of your food." The child replied, "You may have your share." Afterwards, when St. Joseph offered her his bed and wanted to lie on the straw, she replied, "No, lie down in the bed. There is plenty of room for both of us." St. Joseph took her in his arms, put her in the bed, and lay down on the straw. In the morning, when the child woke up and looked for St. Joseph, he had disappeared. But behind the door she found a little sack of money that was about as long as a hand, and on it was written that it was for the child who had slept there last night. So she took the little bag and ran home with it, and brought it to her mother, but she secretly kept a few pieces for herself. Now the eldest daughter had grown curious and wanted to go into the forest the next morning. Her mother gave her pancakes with as much as she wanted, bread, and also cheese. In the evening, she found St. Joseph in his little hut, just as the other two had found him. When the soup was ready and St. Joseph said, "I am so hungry, give me some of your food," the girl answered, "Wait until I am satisfied. Then whatever is left over, you shall have it." She ate, however, nearly the whole of it, and St. Joseph had to scrape the dish. Afterwards, the good old man offered her his bed and wanted to lie on the straw. She accepted without objection, lay down in the little bed, and left the hard straw to the white-haired man. The next morning when she woke up, St. Joseph was not to be found, but she didn't trouble herself about that. She looked behind the door for a money bag. It seemed something was lying on the ground, but as she couldn't quite distinguish what it was, she stooped down and bumped her nose against it. But it remained stuck to her nose, and when she stood up again, to her horror, she saw that it was a second nose hanging firmly onto her own. Then she began to scream and wail, but it was of no use. She was forced to see it hanging there on her nose, stretching out so far. She ran off screaming until she met St. Joseph, at whose feet she fell and begged until, out of pity, he took the nose off her again and even gave her 2 farthings. When she got home, her mother was standing before the door and asked, "What have you received?" Then she lied and replied, "A big bag of money, but I lost it on the way." "Lost it," cried the mother. "Oh, but we will find it again soon," and took her by the hand, wanting to search with her. Initially, she started to cry and didn't want to go, but finally she went. However, on the way, so many lizards and snakes attacked them both that they didn't know how to save themselves. Eventually, they stung the wicked child to death, and they stung the mother in the foot because she had not raised her better. The 12 Apostles. 300 years before the birth of the Lord Christ, there lived a mother who had 12 sons, but was so poor and needy that she no longer knew how she was to keep them alive at all. She prayed daily to God that He might grant that all her sons would be together on earth with the promised Redeemer. As her need became even greater, she sent them out one by one into the world to seek their bread. The eldest was called Peter, who went out and had already gone a long way, a whole day's journey, when he entered a great forest. He searched for a way out, but could find none, and became more and more lost. At the same time, he felt such great hunger that he could barely stay upright. Finally, he became so weak that he had to lie down and believe death to be near. Suddenly, a little boy stood beside him, shining brightly and as beautiful and kind as an angel. The child clapped his little hands together so that Peter had to look up and see him. Then the child said, "Why are you sitting there so troubled?" "Alas," answered Peter, "I am going about the world seeking my bread, so that I may yet see the promised beloved Savior. That is my greatest wish." The child said, "Come with me, and your wish shall be fulfilled." It took poor Peter by the hand and led him between cliffs to a great cave. When they entered, everything shimmered with gold, silver, and crystal, and in the middle there stood 12 cradles side by side. Then the little angel said, "Lie down in the first one and sleep a while. I will rock you." Peter did so, and the angel sang to him and rocked him until he fell asleep. And as he slept, the second brother also came, guided there by his guardian angel, and he was rocked to sleep like the first. And so came the others in turn, until all 12 lay there in the golden cradles and slept. However, they slept for 300 years, until the night in which the Savior of the world was born. Then they awoke and were with him on earth and were called the 12 Apostles. The Rose. There was once a poor woman who had 2 children. The youngest had to go into the forest every day to fetch wood. When she went a long way to search for it, a little child, who was very strong, came to her and helped diligently to gather wood and carried it home. But before a moment had passed, the child disappeared. The child told her mother this, but at first she did not believe it. Finally, she brought a rose home and told her mother that the beautiful child had given her this rose and had told her that when the rose bloomed, he would come again. The mother put the rose in water. One morning, the child could not get out of bed. The mother went to the bed and found the child dead, but it lay quite peacefully. On the same morning, the rose had bloomed. Poverty and humility lead to heaven. Once upon a time, there was a king's son who went out into the field and was thoughtful and sad. He looked at the sky, which was so beautifully pure and blue, and sighed, saying, "How wonderful it must be up there in heaven." He then saw a poor old man coming along the road, approached him and asked, "How can I come to heaven?" The man replied, "Through poverty and humility. Put on my tattered clothes, wander the world for 7 years, and learn its misery. Take no money, but if you hunger, ask compassionate hearts for a bit of bread, and thus you will draw near to heaven." So the king's son took off his magnificent coat and donned the beggar's garb in its place, went out into the wide world, and endured great suffering. He took nothing but a little food, said nothing, but prayed to the Lord that he would one day welcome him into his heaven. When the 7 years were over, he returned to his father's castle, but no one recognized him. He said to the servants, "Go and tell my parents that I have returned." But the servants did not believe him, laughed, and left him standing there. Then he said, "Go and tell my brothers to come down. I would so like to see them again." They also did not want to, until finally one of them went and told the king's children, but they did not believe it and did not concern themselves with it. So he wrote a letter to his mother, describing to her all his misery, but did not say that he was her son. Out of pity, the queen assigned him a place under the stairs and had food brought to him daily by 2 servants. But one was malicious and said, "Why should the beggar have good food?" He kept it for himself or gave it to the dogs, bringing the weak, emaciated beggar only water. However, the other was honest and brought him what was given for him. It was little, but he could live on it for a while. All the while he was quite patient, but he grew weaker and weaker. But as his illness increased, he desired to receive the Holy Sacrament. As it happens during the middle of Mass, all the bells in the town and the surrounding area began to ring on their own. After Mass, the priest went to the poor man under the stairs, where he lay dead, holding a rose in one hand, a lily in the other, and beside him a paper on which his story was written. When he was buried, a rose grew on one side of his grave, a lily on the other. God's food. Once upon a time, there were 2 sisters. One had no children and was rich, while the other was a widow with 5 children, so poor that she no longer had enough bread to satisfy herself and her children. In her distress, she went to her sister and said, "My children suffer the greatest hunger with me. You are rich. Give me a bite of bread." The immensely wealthy sister was as hard-hearted as stone, saying, "I have nothing in my house," and harshly turned the poor woman away with cruel words. Some time later, the husband of the rich sister came home and attempted to cut himself a piece of bread. However, as he made the first cut into the loaf, red blood flowed out. When the woman saw this, she was terrified and told him what had happened. He hurried to assist the widow, but upon entering her room, he found her praying. She held her 2 youngest children in her arms, while the 3 eldest lay there, having passed away. He offered her food, but she replied, "We no longer desire earthly food. God has already satisfied 3 of us, and he will also heed our prayers." Scarcely had she spoken these words when the 2 little ones took their final breath, and shortly thereafter, her heart broke, and she fell dead.